Thank you for choosing Pilbert Co. for your listening needs. Please enjoy this edition of Reality Check, Part 2.
Hello?
The curtain opened swiftly to reveal a middle-aged man dressed in one of the most interesting uniforms Dev had seen. He had all the standard clothing articles: a tie, khakis, buttoned shirt, formal shoes. One would expect, except all were bleached in the most pure, blinding white. He imagined possible. A strange, baggy cap donned the top of his graying head. There was not a spot or stain anywhere to be found. He was modestly tall and sported a neatly trimmed mustache, which came into view as he turned to face him. He held out his hand confidently in front of him, which Dev returned promptly. It was not an overly firm handshake, but one that was still present.
I'm David Spanish, and I'll be your reality checker for the next few days.
Nice to meet you, David. I have a few questions that...
Spanish waved his hands frantically in front of his white shirt as he smiled.
Oh, sir, don't worry at all. This would certainly be a bit, what's the word, unnerving for you if you're not familiar with Pilbert. After all, you're the first in your family to be employed here. It is a special privilege to have.
He affirmatively smiled at him, showcasing eyes with the same intense glare as the woman before. They had a sort of life that he recognized, however. He had to admit the man had done his homework. Maybe he would be easier to converse with.
Please, sir, follow me. The name is Dev, right?
Yes, that's right. Dev Bakshi.
He then followed Spanish through the other side of the curtain. This entire time, he had never thought that the other side had anything behind it. How naive of him. On the other side of the curtain lay another marathon hallway. Its typical beige coloring was sliced by a white stripe that ran down both walls. Spanish began to pace down the halls at the same, rushed pace Dev had seen when he entered the facility. It was somewhat less than power walking, but a healthy pace all the same. They took a right after about 100 steps and turned the corner. He finally noticed the first door that opened to this hallway. There must be a rather large room behind it. He couldn't think of another reason why it would be so sparse. They continued to trudge on and on down the endless corridor. Turn after endless turn. At least 10,000 tiles ran underfoot as they tread. It was well larger than any hospital that he had visited. The only thing he could compare the experience to. Yet something else began to change about the surroundings. The white stripe had begun to widen. Like Spanish's uniform, it shone an unadulterated white that now took up half the wall space. It brightened the hallway significantly. Even the floor looked cleaner.
The color of this hallway is changing, I see.
Spanish turned his head around while still keeping a brisk pace.
Call me Dave, and yes, you're right. When it becomes fully white, we will have reached our destination.
And where are we headed?
The Reality Observation Campus, that's what we call it.
So, if I can ask, why are we heading there? This is just so different to me.
I know, Mr. Bakshi, I know, but I promise I will explain everything when I get there. It's much better that way when following the protocol.
Right, I understand.
He didn't, of course. The marathon continued as they paced down another series of hallways. Perhaps this is why the pace was so fast for everyone involved. A welcome surprise came with a row of windows lining one side of the corridor. The sun shone through and reflected blindingly on the tile and walls.
Almost there, Dev.
One more turn and one more corridor later, they had finally reached it. It must have been at least half a mile. It was all too obvious with the large sign hanging from the ceiling. Reality Observation Campus. The entire space before him was now the same blinding white. The only thing that wasn't was the receptionist in front of them. Besides the clothes he wore, everything else down to the handles on the cabinets was white. He searched over his mind, trying to recall any historic styles and design elements from school he could liken it to. He couldn't. It was a look all its own.
Hi, James. Checking in for Dev Bakshi.
Spanish said as he passed by the desk, his clothes blending perfectly into and out of it. He motioned for Dev to move around it. He wondered what it was there for. This section of the office didn't appear to be customer-facing.
Do you get a lot of traffic in and out of here?
Oh, only via escorts like you and I. Here, follow me into my office.
He followed him down another long hallway. This time he could see the end of the hallway, terminating in a simple push door. He felt relief for finally reaching what felt like the end of the tunnel. Glancing around, the hallway greeted them, featuring signs that stuck out neatly from the wall. Strange but rather obvious names: cafeteria, bathroom, office space, meeting space, among many others. He followed Spanish halfway down until they met a sign entitled Hallway.
Strange name to have on a sign.
Dev chuckled.
It's my office.
Dave smiled back while opening the door with the hand scanner. Dev entered first into what was the most comically small waiting area that he had ever seen. No larger than his bathroom, it featured a desk that would have made an elementary student feel proud, followed by exactly one, seat, and an end table next to it. Atop the table was a magazine that appeared to be a year out of date but never touched.
Wow, Mr. Spanish. This is such a small office. How do you make do here?
Please just call me Dave.
He insisted.
It's not as big as the other office spaces here, but it's also not my job to insist for everyone else. It serves its purpose very efficiently. Now go ahead and sit down. I have to answer all those great questions you have proposed.
He sat down on the overly firm chair, only 2 feet away from Spanish's body. The color of his uniform began to remind him of toilet paper before he began to notice another bizarre detail. No more than 3 feet across from him was a blank door. It was bright white like the rest of this wing, but featured an old-fashioned turnstile doorknob. It had been a while since he saw one of those. What it was doing here was anyone's guess, as well as why a space this small was constructed in the first place. Conserving doors was definitely not a priority.
All right, Dev.
He exhaled.
We've got a lot to go over with, only the normal amount of allotted time. New family line recruits, as well call them, are quite rare these days, so they've removed the extra time that was traditionally given them. It's only been that way for about 100 years now.
100 years?
Dave laughed.
Ah, yes. You really will be learning quite a lot these next few days. You're aware of how long the corporation has been viable?
Oh, yes, I almost forgot. It's at least been a millennia, right?
Almost correct. Right now, we are going on year 1349. We are officially...
The longest-running company in the galaxy.
Yes, correct. Don't forget the largest as well.
I think I remember enough from my history classes.
He joked. Dave smiled again.
I should hope so. A company structure of this size has not been accomplished before and may never happen again. These walls themselves are full of history. Enjoy it for as long as you're here.
I plan to. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now I'll proceed to answer what is likely the most pressing question on your mind. What am I doing here?
Dev nodded in approval.
The first thing I would like to say is this. This is all part of the Pilbert identification protocols. Maybe that will ease some nerves.
It was the same type of thing he had already heard several times so far. Before he could speak, Dave responded.
But I see that you are an observant young man, so I'll explain a bit further about the guidelines the company follows.
He paused and gathered his thoughts.
We, Pilbert, are what is termed a white paper company. It is an integral philosophy to who we are, and is an excellent basis for all of the rules we follow and make for each other. Thankfully, these rules are as necessary as they are effective. And that is all due to the nature of white paper.
Dave flipped the top of his desk, a fake wood veneer of poor quality, to reveal a compartment. He briskly stuck his hand into the desk, fetching a blank sheet of paper. The compartment sounded oddly hollow. Was it empty otherwise?
White paper is always here. One cannot doubt its existence if it is right next to their person. Its presence is a sort of subtle power, you might say. If it exists here in the now, we must confront it as it confronts us. This is why Pilbert has remained the last company to convert to paperless communication. Yes, we use digital and quantum communications regularly, but we will not legitimize anything until we see the white paper.
Dev noticed Dave's eyes had assumed a stern and determined look. There was emotion behind his visage. He was truly convinced of what he was saying.
So, everything must be printed on paper to be official?
Yes, but the reality is a bit more nuanced. Due to the paper reforms of 2250, this has been partially amended. In its current state, many believe the rule is here to stay permanently. In lieu of the white paper, any pre-approved form of physical proof will suffice. The type of physical proof must be voted on, though, by the board in a unanimous approval.
Dev moved in his seat. It wasn't very comfortable, and the intensity of Dave's focus was impressive.
But sir, Dave,
He paused, stammering.
What is the purpose of this protocol? The reason for it?
You are indeed an intelligent young man,
He said, as his eyes returned to their original life.
I don't often get to explain why very often, but I guess now is as good an opportunity as any.
He glanced at the clock on the wall and resumed speaking.
We only have a few minutes, but I believe I can summarize it in that amount of time. Let me ask you this. What is the reason you eat at your favorite restaurant?
I guess because I enjoy it.
A common answer, but this is actually incorrect.
Dev donned a puzzled look.
There is a more accurate answer that we have divined over our years of operating here.
Another smile came across his face as if he was opening a gift. It was a cherished possession.
The reason you go and decide to spend money there is because it is real. You can see it, you can feel it, you can taste it. This is the true reason some companies succeed and others fail. It is because they provide something of physical value.
He continued while straightening his back.
Physical value trumps all. Even all emotional or sentimental value purely boils down to the physical responses our bodies create. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yes, I think so.
Good. You're a bright young man, and I expected as much. So for my closing remark, it will suffice to say that is what keeps this company running. There is no other company that has lasted this long because there is no other way to do it. And the answer comes from the reliance on the physical, the white paper. Some may call us dogmatic, but the results simply do not lie. Anyways, time is running low. Let's go.
The abrupt change of subject was jarring as Dave stood up from the minuscule desk and pulled out one last paper.
Here's your schedule for the day. I will guide you throughout as needed, but the purpose, as I'm sure you deduced, is to observe you without unnecessary influences.
Dev was even more puzzled than he had already been.
Influences? I'm not sure I entirely understand.
Oh,
Dave displayed a puzzled look.
perhaps I have been giving you too much credit.
Was that a jab? The opaqueness of his words made it hard to tell. A touch of frustration took root. Dave continued.
It is understandable, I suppose, the reality. Observation protocols go hand in with the white paper, a direct correlation. How can we be sure that it is you who are here working? There's no other way than to physically see who you are and observe you in as many places as we can. That is why you see a comprehensive survey of all possible rooms within this wing itself. They are perfect replicas, as they should be. You will be given your ID as soon as we document your mannerisms, both here and on the first day of your job. Now we really must be going.
The frustration morphed into confusion for Dev. He had already seen some trivial occurrences, but this had taken the cake. For what need did a company dedicate an entire office, even a department, to simply observe them doing what they normally would? The absurdity had begun to become palpable.
Thank you for explaining,
he said, as he nodded his head and faced the door to the hallway.
Oh no, not that one. The door across from you to your right. Yes, that one. Please open it.
Of course, the turnstile door, he should have put it together sooner. After all, he was a bright young man. The room was titled Hallway, and that is indeed exactly what was behind the door. A perfect slice of the hallway that he just walked through to get here. It was no more than 30 feet to a dead end. There were no doors anywhere, just perfectly copied and pasted walls.
Okay, Dev. You'll notice there is a camera at one corner of the room. Don't let that distract you from this observation session. If you could, please make one round of the hallway, back and forth, please.
An uncanny dread began to manifest as he stood at the entrance. It was surreal. Here he was, on his first day being recorded walking the hallway, merely to get his ID. Tentatively, he paced down the hallway, pretending to forget the dead end, trying to casually take in his surroundings, but not too much. After all, that would look unnatural. In a moment, he returned to Spanish, who was beaming.
Excellent job, Dev. Now we'll have to do that 39 more times to get a good sample size. This is easily the most falsifiable area that we have. We need extra data for this one.
His temple began to throb as he started pacing again. He would have to disregard it for the time being. For once, he could say he was frustrated, and justifiably so. Then again, he had been looking for a reason this entire time. He urged himself to calm down. It was only the first day, and Remy had not mentioned anything like this when recalling a normal day's work. This had to be merely a formality, as Spanish described it. After all, it was only the first day. Sure enough, he completed all 39 rounds as quickly as he started them. Maybe it seemed that way, because he had already walked a mile just to get there.
All right, excellent.
Dave chimed.
Let's go ahead and move over to the office space so we can get the rest of this complete.
Dev followed Spanish down the hallway and across into the appropriately named room. The rest of the day had been much less suffocating than the hallway incident. Dave Spanish, the reality checker, carried through on his promise. He observed Dev non-intrusively and from a distance. Although then the whole process felt rather intrusive in itself. He sensed a concerted effort to be discreet from Dave, which he respected. The whole process was a comical endeavor, but perhaps this was something he would simply learn to take in stride while working at Pilbert. He had made a firm resolve to suspend his conclusions until he could actually see the job for himself. He groaned. That sounded exactly like something Dave would tell him. But in fact, as the Levi train charged towards his home city, he could feel his gripes fade as the forested mountains came and went across the landscape. After all, the actual work he did within the office space was drawing a sample logo for a past conference. The workflow felt exactly like what it should have been, no more, no less. He had all the tools he needed and, while presented in a rather straightforward manner, it was also equally reasonable. He also couldn't help but think about the lunch he was provided. It consisted of some sort of sauced steak with delicately sautéed vegetables. A side of mashed potatoes was also offered, but he declined. That was one earth dish that he had never been fond of. He was struck by the generous amount of the meat. He had to admit, it was a simple, but satisfying, perfectly serviceable. It was all tied together with a glass of milk that had a strange, off-yellow color. Dave assured him that it was safe to drink and, in fact, an exclusive product of the Pilbert Company. He found it surprisingly pleasant. Some sort of vanilla taste with a citrusy undertone. He agreed with Dave. It was deliciously subtle. It was hard to imagine a corporation existing for so long it had developed its own cuisine, but this indeed seemed to be the case. Still, he felt remorse at not texting Remy during the day and hoped to see him tomorrow. Spanish said he had passed the initial observations with flying colors and would finally meet his workmates the next day for the final rounds. He pulled out his handheld from his pocket. Dev.
Hey man, I'm sorry I wasn't able to see you today, but I had to go through these super tedious identification protocols. I had no idea, but it seems like tomorrow will be the last day, and I'll get to meet up with you. Look forward to seeing you there.
Remy responded a few minutes before the train arrived. Remy.
Dev, no problem, bud. OMG, I almost forgot today was your first day. And yeah, those identification protocols are a huge hassle. I really should have mentioned them to you, but I guess I've gotten so accustomed to things around here I forgot to tell you. Don't worry, though. The job is very, very chill, and the higher-ups tend to mind their own. Sorry to be so absent-minded, but I won't forget to talk tomorrow. Haha. Can't wait to see you.
Yep, that sounded just like Remy. Perhaps finally touching base with someone was all he needed to look past his initial woes. It was a comforting thought as he exited the train and headed back home, the sky purple with sunset.
Thank you for joining us in this edition of Reality Check. Be sure to subscribe and tune in for the next installment. For more Pilbert Co., follow us on Medium, TikTok, and Instagram.